Everybody's had some adventures. Everybody's had a few close calls. Everybody's got a story. What's yours?
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 17 of Cool Story with David J. McNeil. This episode is part 3 of a 3-parter with the one and only Mr. Tommy Chong. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support. This episode picks up my conversation with the one and only Canadian-American actor, writer, director, musician, businessman, cannabis rights activist, and comedian Tommy Chong. In this final conversation, I chatted with Tommy about his many years as an advocate for cannabis. We also chatted about what it was like growing up poor and to be later in life rewarded for his creativity with wealth. At the age of 82, Tommy is also quite reflective on his life as a whole. So I asked him if he had put much thought into what he hoped his legacy would be. But why don't we just jump into it? Here is part 3 of my conversation with Tommy Chong. So what I was going to ask you was, you told me that you felt that you were here for a reason, and most likely related to the fact that you were here to deliver a message about marijuana. You could have been like a lot of guys and just enjoyed smoking your weed and kind of did your thing or whatever. But you've been an ambassador for pot. Why was that?
I wish I knew.
Mm-hmm.
It was like my prison experience, like I said before, I for some reason I ended up meeting people that just got out of prison, end up using our house as a halfway house.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as I got, because the way I got turned on to pot was, was quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Cosmic. I never got turned on until I was totally ready. And then when I did get turned on, I treated it, with a lot of respect. And then I realized it really is, a good way to improve my health, as opposed to, see, a lot of people, there's different reasons why they get high. And there's a lot of different reasons why they don't get high. Mm-hmm. It's what you're trained to do, I guess. This is just, I'm just trying to figure this out. But I think in my case, because it touched such a spiritual side of me, very, very strongly. And then it led me to the spiritual literature and to the knowledge. And once you get that knowledge, it's like your computer, it's all of a sudden you discover certain things, certain apps. If you hit a certain combination, you come up with answers. Like in the Bible said, ask and you shall receive. Well, I started really early in my life, I started asking, literally almost out loud, okay, if there is a God, let me see the proof. Mm-hmm. And wow, I asked and the proof came.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the reasons, because I was given a lot of gifts, but not one of the gifts made me feel like, well, this is it. I know what I want to do the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. Other than the only gift that I had was this search for God, And then when I found, when I found the way the cannabis affects me, then I started, when I'd be interviewed or talking about it, it was never like a daring thing to do, I smoked a joint. It was like, when I smoked, it was no one really, I said for sure. It was, I grew up in the 50s. It was like alcohol. Mm-hmm. There was a whole thing of alcohol civilization mm-hmm. or community, Everything revolved around alcohol,
yeah.
you work to the weekend, and then the weekend you go to the parties, and you know, Canadians, you put your case of beer, you brought your case of beer, and
Yeah.
and you sat on the case of beer, and that was your beer,
Mm-hmm.
and you drank it, and then you know, everybody had their own booze, you know. But when I started getting into the marijuana culture, it was a different kind of thing. It was always experimenting. Hey, try this, try this, try this, you know. And it was like, because we're in Canada, this didn't happen all the time. It was just whenever certain entertainers would come to town, they would have something. And so I think when I went to prison, I started writing. When I wrote the book, then I started, you know, it wasn't me, you know, like I didn't choose this path.
Yeah.
The path kind of chose me.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, people wanted to hear what I had to say about the pot, and that's the way it is now. You know, they want to hear about it, and then the more I talk about it, that's why I really couldn't get too deep into the growing or the naming of the kind of different strains, all that stuff, you know. But yeah, I was, you know, right in the middle of it all. And then I became a reluctant spokesperson.
Right. Reluctant.
Yeah. You know, well, when we did the movies, for sure, because like I said, the first movie, you know, the record producer wanted it to be a series of record bits, you know, Cheech and Chong's greatest hits. But Cheech and I both decided, and it was me that really made the final decision, that it would be, you know, about pot and about the Mexican culture, or the Chicano culture. And so, especially during this lockdown and that, you know, and I got so much weed, you know, it came to me. And then when I tried to grow it this last cycle, and I messed up so badly, again, as soon as I text that, you know, that I messed it up, and then everybody started donating things for me, you know, to help me grow my weed better. So I got a tent donated, and just like, you know, everything gets given to me. And then, so I got this feeling that, you know, because of my status, you know, as a movie actor, comedian, or whatever. And it's always been about pot, either talking about pot or being under the influence. Well, I talked about other things that were kind of related to pot.
Yeah.
You know, and so everything was pointing in that direction. And then I got these messages of how to help fix the economy, and you know, I ran a few of these ideas by some, you know, real professional guys, because again, you know, like with Shelby and myself, especially Shelby's such a fine artist. That's another, like, a pot wish come true, you know. Because I was married before, and, you know, I was happily married, but very traditional, you know. The wife worked, and I did my thing. But when I met Shelby, I met a soulmate, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, the only reason she went with me is that I was married. I was safe, because she was one of these beauties that had a problem of guys falling in love with her, you know. And she was like a free spirit. She just, you know, wanted to do her art. And then when she met me, and because I was constrained, you know, she thought that was perfect. And then we did fall in love, to the point where we just had to be together. That was the end of that. And now we're together. But even right now, even though we're together, she's still, you know, an individual. She's, you know, it's like I got a roommate. And not even a roommate. I got another professional living in the house, you know.
Right.
She's got her own everything, her own life, everything. And so everything, it just sort of made it easy for me to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, and to promote pot, and to think of ways to help the world, because I say a lot of things in it that it's not really me talking. You know, it's like, why did I say that? You know, I've said some really strange things. Cheech would look at me, where'd that come from, and so that's the conclusion that I've been coming to, especially lately because I've been reading Emmett Fox. He's a very the spiritual. Looking for my book, but anyway, he's a spiritualist. Actually, I started off with another spiritualist, Joel Goldsmith, and I read everything Joel wrote, and then it got a little repetitious. And then Joel would always talk about Emmett Fox, and so then I thought, oh, okay, I'll read Emmett Fox.
Yeah,
and Emmett Fox is another spiritualist that I really feel channeled by a spirit like him.
Yeah.
There's so many answers that you get when you ask.
Yeah.
When you go looking. It's just like I always it's almost like a gold miner, a guy looking for gold, And what you do, you look for areas where gold would be, based on different past finds and that. And so you don't just look for the gold; you look for the situation around the gold. That's why it could be in riverbeds, it could be in different places. And so when you find that vein of gold, and then you follow it, and it might end, or it might be part of a larger mother lode, and that's what I found with pot, because every high I get, it's not the same. They're never the same high. Sometimes I'll have to write, get my guitar out and start trying to write a tune, or I'll write lyrics for no reason. I just do stream of consciousness.
Yeah, just being channeled.
Almost like being channeled. And so almost everything foreshadowed this pandemic, because I was in a movie called The Color of Space with Nick Cage, and the movie was about a pandemic that came to Earth from it was what's his name? A very famous science fiction writer. I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, he wrote it, and all the science fiction buffs, you did one of those movies, and the director is from Africa, by way of England. Very strange guy, Stanley, Stanley. Anyway, he wanted me to play the part of this sort of a recluse hermit,
right,
that foreshadowed. He's the voice of the movie, talking about this pandemic, where it came out of nowhere and all that stuff. And so we ended up, first of all, we're in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, studying tango. It was like a gift to my wife. She's a really good tango dancer. And we went from Buenos Aires we ended up in Portugal, shooting a movie about a pandemic.
Yeah.
And wow, you talk about foreshadowing. Almost a year to the day later,
wow,
the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell me.
Interesting the way these things happen.
Yeah.
Let me ask you: Do you feel vindicated that the world is changed? It's the way it perceives pot and what it can do for people after all the work you've put into trying to change people's minds about the plant, about cannabis?
Not really.
No? Not
really. I don't think in terms of that. The way I think is that we're all on our own trip. We're all individuals. And now that's a lot of big trips, and everybody's on their own trip. And this is one of them. Yeah. This is just one of them. And that's why in the Bible, it tells you not to judge, not to be judgmental. And the reason is that we're in a physical world. And judging would be like judging. Everything's constantly changing. Everything's constantly changing. So everything is developing. It's like judging a cookie before it's baked.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, you look in there, oh God, I can't eat that. Look, it's not even cooked. You know, it's soft and icky and mushy and everything else. You know, no, you don't judge. Or when you judge righteous judgment. That's what the Bible says. And the righteous judgment is that. And that's why you don't want to go negative, because again, negatives in the Goldsmith books, it says something about you can't go anywhere with a negative thought.
Right.
You're stopped with a negative thought. It's almost, that's what when they talk about the valley of the shadow of death. That's what death is when you judge something in a negative manner, you actually kill it. And you don't allow it to grow in your own mind.
Right.
You see. But if you don't judge and you just admire or you just observe, then you can see the change, you know. Then you can see the change. You know, just like you can see a little skunk. It look really cute. I think that's cute. You know, and you're judging appearances. Oh, that's cute. That's cuddly. And then you go to pick it up and it picks up his tail and squirts the shit out of you. You know, and then you go, and then see that's judgment. That's judgmental. You see. Now, if you just observe and watch and study and learn, see, that's the trick. You don't judge, you learn. And when you learn, there's always something to learn. And there's always something to learn from people, especially. Like I've been told, you know, especially in this pandemic, you know, my son's very nervous about me because I got fans. They want to take pictures of me. And the weirdest thing about me that I can see is that I was never prepared for stardom, so to speak.
Right.
That's when I started out playing music. I wasn't the star. I was the backup guitar player, you know.
Yeah.
And I was making the fiddle player. I was giving him what he needed. You know, he needed that rhythm. He needed that. Oh, and when I gave him that rhythm and he heard that rhythm, then he could really play. And so I was always encouraging him to play. But I never, and he got the accolades, you know, oh yeah, hey, Mel, you're the greatest, Mel, all right, blah, 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 you know. And I was totally content to do my job of making him good, because I knew how important I was, because he would do whatever he had to do to get me to be there.
Yeah.
Like a lot, you know, it's like Cheech and Chong, you know, you can't have the show without Cheech or Chong. Yeah. You know, if it's just a Chong show, okay, Chong's okay. But you can't have, oh, instead of Chong, here comes someone else. You know, and so when it came time to become a solo art act, okay, let me study that. So I studied that. I learned how to become a solo act. But again, see, we're never alone. A comedian can't perform without an audience.
Yeah.
So you need an audience.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I was practicing my comedy, I used to go for walks with my dog. I had a German Shepherd, sort of a mutt, you know. It was a Labrador. It was a Labrador, a little black Labrador. And I called him Tempe. And the reason I called him Tempe is that I did a show for SPCA, you know, animal shelter thing. And they put this puppy on my lap and said, this puppy needs a home. And it cuddled in my lap. And next thing you know, I was home. And I never had a dog. And I grew up with dogs, you know. And I said, oh. But again, I never owned the dog. But even the one I grew up with, it was a family dog. And so I never really owned anything. And so when I was going home, you know, I'm driving home, I phoned my wife and I said, Shelby, and I said, I got a dog. She said, well, that'll be temporary. And so I said, okay. So I named him Tempe. And we kept him for 16 years. Yeah. But when I was practicing to be a solo comedian, I'd take Tempe on a walk, and there was a little stage in the field where I'd walk to. Now, I don't know what that stage was about. I'm not sure. But it was a stage built around a tree. It was weird. But anyway, I'd get on that stage and my dog would be sitting there and I'd practice my stand-up. just practicing being on stage by myself. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of go sing. And my dog was my audience. He'd sit there and look at me for a while, and then he'd get bored and wander off, or he'd start licking his balls. And I could tell, if I was going over, not just by his reaction, but that, yeah. So I always approached everything as like, almost like channeled, like, okay, you're going to be a solo act from it. Because that's the reason I went solo, was that Cheech and I broke up. And then I tried to do a movie by myself, and that didn't work. I mean, I did it. It was not bad, But again, to be with a Cheech in your life, it was, I just never got the respect. And then, so then I realized I needed to be a solo act in order to gain the respect that I needed to be as a solo act. And so I did. And so that was another case of when one door shuts, another door opens.
Sure.
And so when Cheech and I broke up, instead of moaning about it, I just went on, took advantage of, did a solo. And then I realized I was lonely on the road. That road is lonely, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, especially if you're married.
Yeah.
And especially if you're married to a gorgeous woman, because, it's just the law of the odds. When you leave anything alone, beautiful, alone, they're going to find companionship somewhere,
Yeah.
and she was trying to be an actress. She was taking acting. She's always been, want to learn how to do things right. So she takes lessons. Right now, she takes 3 or 4 lessons, dance, and she does her Pilates kind of thing, and she does her art and everything. And so I said to her, I was going, I got a gig in Guam. It's beautiful. And I thought, I'm going to Guam, so why don't you come with me? And she goes, nah, I don't want to just come and sit there, sit in the dressing room. I says, well, how about if I put you in the show? And then right away she's like, oh, okay. And so she ended up in the show in Guam. And her first gig really was just introducing me.
Yeah, I've seen some of those.
Ladies and gentlemen, and here's Tommy Chong. And then pretty soon she started doing a couple of bits. Okay, tell me about in a minute, but first of all, how many da-da-da. And next thing you know, we started writing bits for her, and she progressed. And then she got to the point where she was doing a good 20 minutes solo.
Yeah.
And then we'd get to, then I was always there like her training wheels, whenever it got tight. Oh, okay. You ready to see Tommy? Okay. And then she'd bring me out.
Yeah.
And then I worked her into my act as well. And so when then Cheech and I, and we're doing really well. We're all over the place, selling T-shirts. And then she got me selling T-shirts. Because before she joined the act, I used to sell the club's T-shirts. Yeah, and wherever, and the clubs loved me. They booked me in there as much as they could because I'd sell all their T-shirts.
Yeah.
Because I never had any of my own to sell. And so as soon as she joined up, she goes, hey, we're going to sell our own T-shirts. And so pretty soon we were the act that was selling more merch than anybody else.
Yeah.
We're selling tons of merch. And so then talking about Cheech and I getting back together again. And that was like, whoa, that was a big deal. Well, Shelby said, no, I'm going to be part of the act. She said, we're not going to break up our act. We're
got a good thing going.
Good. Yeah. And so then I said, okay. And so then we got a gig in Australia. And the Australian promoter says, okay, well, then Shelby will go on first. Then there will be an intermission. And then we'll bring Cheech and Chong on. And at first I was like, oh, I don't know how that's going to work. And then we told Shelby. Shelby said, oh, yeah, okay, great. So that's the kind of lady she is. Mm-hmm. And so then she developed her own act.
Yeah.
She did her own. It started, ended up being about 30 minutes, 35. She could do 45 if she had to.
That's a lot of time.
But she was never really, she was like my wife, introducing, she could do jokes. Yeah, she could be funny. Yeah, she could control the crowd, all that. But, it was because we would be together. And then she tried to, with a girlfriend, she went out and started doing open mic nights, her and her girlfriend.
Cool.
Yeah. And then she found out, then she found, the real truth,
Right.
not riding on anybody's fame, just, who are you? You better be funny or else.
Yeah, you better grab them quick.
And when 9/11 hit, her and her girlfriend, another comedian, they were in, where were they? Nashville. I think they were in Nashville when 9/11 hit. And to show you what a comedian, how focused they were, Shelby especially. Okay, 9/11 hit, everything got shut down, right?
Mm-hmm.
They show up to the comedy club ready to do their set. and the club owner says, haven't you watched television? Yeah. Well, didn't you see what went on? Yeah. We still want to do our set.
The show must go on.
I mean, in her mind, it was when she told me that. Oh, she's always amazed me, and yeah, that's the way it went. And this lockdown really affected her because she wasn't working. She got that bug,
Yeah.
performance bug, man.
Yeah.
Whoa, when you're not working, it's just you're counting the minutes before you okay, I leave Friday or I leave whatever, and then nothing happens until Friday, and then you're on the plane, and then she comes alive, like how it is. Mm. With this lockdown, we had to stop everything. Well, me, it was no problem. Again, I'm a writer, I'm whatever I am.
You can stay home and do your thing. You're good.
I could, I did time in jail with no problem.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I get out already? Oh, okay. Yeah. It was, it's a trip. So again, I really do believe, my job is to save the world with not so much marijuana in the sense that I'm going to get everybody stoned or anything like that. No, not at all. Mm-hmm. No. What I mean is that marijuana, or actually we're going to start calling it cannabis. I was told by a grower that marijuana is a slave name, and that we should just call it cannabis. So the cannabis just affects the brain. And with me, my brain that's what I feel, that I am really on a mission to save humanity with ideas that were channeled to me through the cannabis plant, and that's where I feel I'm at now.
So that it sounds like your focus is that other people have the opportunity to enjoy what you've enjoyed mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other people get to open themselves up to that experience and experience what you've been lucky enough to experience.
Well, what if that's your goal here? You see? Yeah. I learned, over the years, like when we did Corsican Brothers in France, that was another thing. Shelby always. But she's so smart and so talented. When we did Up in Smoke, for instance, I was going to be busy doing the movie, so her and her sister went to Paris. It was a dream of hers, and they went and lived in Paris. Took their kids, they had their little guys, and they went and lived. They found a little hotel, a little cheap hotel, and then they found a little restaurant that would take their ratty kids. They had a special room for them because the kids would be so messy. 2-3-year-old kids, they're just food all over the place, but she went and lived in Paris with her sister, and they studied French, and she became quite good. She is to this day. Me, it was terrible. Yeah, the only thing I learned was je ne parle pas français. And so she's always been, kind of ahead of the curve like that, or taking advantage of our situation, and like when we went, when I started making big money with the movies, I bought the first house. Yeah. And we lived in it for a while, and then it was too big. It was too big of a mansion. And the problem with mansions is that they're only good if you entertain. And then if you're entertaining, then all of a sudden you're no longer the owner of the mansion. You are the guy that tells where you can get the ice, where the bathroom is.
Right. It owns you.
You move the cars around if they're parked.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just, and then you can't go to bed because you still got guests there. And then when you go to bed, oh shit, you got to get, it was just too much.
Yeah.
And so we, first chance we got, and then my son fell and hurt his head on the tile. And it was like an excuse, oh, we got to get out of here.
This place is trying to kill us.
So we moved into, that's what I learned, the beauty of a small house, because you can't have too many guests.
Yeah.
You got out of that one. Yeah. So she, she just took over that part of my life, and the finding, what do you call it? Being a manager, managing everything.
Right.
And that's basically what she is. Not my son now has taken over that job quite a bit. Yeah, he's still right. And now my wife, she's totally concentrating on her own art and everything, which is really, really good. So I really got a perfect thing here, and I am left alone. And like I tell people, I have these country habits, because I do have a habit of tripping about the way I was raised,
Yeah.
And I realize as you get older, you naturally go back to your childhood, because that's when you were really alone. Even though you might have had a friend, but maybe you didn't see that friend all the time, once in a while, and even though you had a brother and a sister like I did, we were estranged. My sister had her life, my brother had his life, I had my life, and but I was always creative, and so I always think back to those days when I was alone, because as you get older, the older you get, the more alone you become.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at now,
Tommy then recounted some of his memories about growing up poor, and how those times were always at the forefront of his mind later in life, when his creativity was rewarded financially.
I grew up poor, and we used to take foster kids in to make it. No, that's what poor people do. When I was watching a show where they're evicting people, and they evicted this one family, young guy, they got the kids, and everything they owned was in a stroller, and they're pushing it out, and they're kicking them out of their house, And I looked at the guy, and I did not feel anything but kind of like excitement for him. I didn't feel sad at all. And the reason is that he's a survivor.
Yeah.
I mean, he got to live in a nice house for a while. And what I've envisioned is that, there's some relative that he's going to go and stay with the kids. And they're going to, like I did when I was growing up. Oh, we stayed with my aunt and uncle. We stayed where we had to stay, And when I was a baby, I don't remember it, but the first real house we had was a converted chicken coop. It was on a farm in north of Edmonton. Yeah, Athabasca. I think it was called Athabasca, and my dad tried to raise turkeys, and on the land that he was working was an old chicken coop. And so they renovated it, and that was our first house. Yeah. I was a baby. I was just born. And then my mother told me that when we moved to Edmonton, we had to rent a horse-drawn, it was a hay wagon. And we put all our furniture on the hay wagon. And my mother had a pet crow that she had adopted when, she was one of those special people, and she adopted this pet crow, and the pet crow followed us right up to the town, and then I guess it flew off and found a home. But Yeah, I've been through that. I know that feeling. And the thing is, you don't know you're poor when you're poor.
No.
You know
Until
when
somebody
you're
tells
hungry.
you you're poor.
Yeah. Oh no, you see somebody else, and I used to feel sorry for rich kids. I never envied anybody.
Mm-hmm.
One time I did. No, not envied, but I admired them.
Mm-hmm.
One time, a coach from the U.S. came up to coach the Calgary Stampeders,
Yeah.
and his kid had to enroll in our school. Now we're a Canadian school, so it was like if you're a new kid, you had to go fight everybody and see how tough you were.
Right.
It was a Canadian thing. You had to go behind the tower. We had a water tower there, and they're going to fight behind the tower.
Yeah.
And that was, hey, I'll meet you behind the tower. I'll meet you, behind the thing. And I remember the rich kid, the first day he's in school, he's back there and he's duking it out with Teddy Blair. I remember the guy's name. And the kid had this beautiful summer shirt, just the casual that we wear down in the States all the time.
Right.
But we never wore them up in Canada. We never had that clothes. And I remember looking at him, and he could box. He was really a good boxer. He knew what to do with it. And that was the trick. See, if you knew how to hold your fist, the other guy went, oh shit. But I was saying when you're poor, because poor kids are always around other poor kids.
Yeah.
And there's always someone poorer than you. Like us, like with us. There was a family one time, they were so poor that the father loaded them up in a car one day and they went and robbed a bank.
Wow.
And they got caught. And they got put in jail, but at least they were warm.
Right.
These kids used to go to school, no socks with rubber boots in Calgary in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
That's poor.
Yeah.
That's poor. And of course they smelled because they had no bath and everything else. And I remember that reading that. And my own nephew, no, he's a relative, like a distant cousin from outside of Trail, BC, the Iwasiks, Ukrainian. He was famous because he robbed a bank too. But the trouble is, he rented a car from Hertz or something, and they put a governor on it because it was a young kid, and he wanted him to speed.
Yeah.
And the kid, he robbed a bank, and then the bank phoned the cops and said who it was, and the cop says, oh, okay, I know who it is. Don't worry about it. And so they had their lunch, and they went over and picked him up and put him in jail.
Yeah.
Put the kid in jail. And the kid was, it was kind of sad. And that. Anyway, he sent me a threatening letter one time, threatening me because I was a famous uncle.
Right.
And I had met him. I met the whole family one year, and so I knew who they were. So no matter how poor you are, there's always someone poor.
Yeah.
And when you grow up in a poor society, your riches are different and your problems are different.
Yeah.
And usually has to do with alcohol. Growing up with me, but that's that like you said, when you ask, how does it feel? I don't know. See, I've never looked at weed, for instance, as being anything but, feeling, makes me feel good. Yeah. I know it's good for you, And so I just felt bad for everybody. And as far as, like now, like we just had a report, we had a dinner and we had a report that the CBD sales are going through the roof, going crazy.
Yeah.
I attribute that to my spiritual training.
Sure.
Because when you get on the right track, man, the rewards are astronomical.
Yeah.
Astronomical.
Yeah.
But you got to be true. You got to be true. And you can't think in terms of that, In fact, if anything, you think in terms of helping people, like now, if I see, homeless or begging on the street, I stop. I give money all the time.
Yeah.
And because I love it. I know the feeling. I know the feeling of being broke and all of a sudden someone gives you money.
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And I've got rich friends, and they're so cheap they will walk to the restaurant rather than to park their car because they don't want to pay the valet parking
Right.
fee.
Yeah.
And these guys are millionaires, billionaires. But you get this weird mindset that for somehow if you screw somebody else out, it makes you feel better or something,
Right. Yeah.
But when you do that, you carry that vibe with you.
Yeah.
And then you have people, waiters, and that. It's almost like, how people around animals, some animals just don't look like certain people.
Sure.
It's a vibe you got. And that's what you carry with you when you're greedy and when you're uptight.
Yeah, that aura.
But, with me, I give stuff away. I love the look. I love the look on the face. Like I get my dogs groomed all the time, and I always give them a big weed tip, and the guy that get the dog groomer, he loves to see me coming.
You're a seeker. You've had an opportunity to see the life from a lot of different vantage points. You talked about being poor as a child. You've been a wealthy person. You've had a lot of experiences. Do you think much about legacy? About
No.
what your legacy is going to be? No, it's not something that you think about much.
The only thing I think about was my funeral.
Right.
I want to write the program for my funeral, because I want it to be very, very funny. I want everybody to be laughing.
Yeah.
Because a really close friend of mine, he was my first landlord. He was my landlord when I had nothing. And we first got the first album, and then we could move into a decent place, and I moved into his place, and he and his wife taught my wife how to cook, and Frank was beautiful. We had the best time. We loved each other. There's a big love to each other. And then as I bought the houses and that, he was a caretaker, took care of it and that. Yeah. And then that one house I bought in Bel Air, he grew a whole big, almost a half an acre of weed for me. And, he taught me I found the seed, I put it in the ground. Next thing I know, I grew a bigger plant. Anyway, he died. And they had me speak at his funeral. Yeah. And so I told the story about him growing the pot plant. And I had that whole church just rocking. They were laughing so hard because because as the plants matured, we had people trying to steal the plants. And Frank sat out in the yard with a gun, and he found he saw the guy stealing, coming in there stealing the weed, and Frank got behind him and said, "You drop that bag or I'm gonna shoot you in the ass." And the guy dropped the bag and ran. And so I told that story at the funeral, and the church was just rocking with laughter. What's nicer than laughter with sadness?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do. When you talk about legacy, when I go out, I want people to come out of that church holding their sides, laughing so hard.
Right. You want to finish your journey as you've lived your journey.
Yeah, happy. Yeah. I want everybody to be smiling and laughing and happy, because I am. I'm going to be laughing, and it's going to be funny.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very comedic. Yeah, that's what it's going to be.
All right. Well, look, Tommy, I want to thank you very much for all the time you've spent with me. It's been a real pleasure, and it's been lovely to listen to you and to understand the way you approach life. There's so much to be learned there, and I've learned a lot from it. And I'm gonna pick up some of the books that you've talked about, and I'm gonna do my own research.
There you go.
Yeah.
Especially Emmett Fox. He'll turn you onto the key of life.
Yeah.
And it's a very simple key. All you do is think of God. It's very simple. We all have a God app. And when things get tough, try it. Try it anytime. Try it with your wife. Try it anytime. Don't say anything, but just think of God. And what happens, that God seeps into you. That's what I do all the time. And it changes everything.
Yeah.
When my wife's kind of pissed off at me, I'll think of God. And the next thing you know, she comes out there and she just baked a whole bunch of goodies. And she has no idea why she did it. But that's the power you have.
Yeah.
No, so enjoy.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's been a real pleasure. And I want to thank you again for spending this time with me. It's been wonderful. So thank you, Tommy. Thank you for being on the podcast, and keep in touch.
I will. You too.
All right. There you have it, part 3 of my chat with the one and only Tommy Chong. I want to thank Tommy again for so generously sharing his time and his cool story. I am truly grateful for the time that Tommy and I spent together, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to our chats as well. It was a real pleasure. Also, thanks again to another great entertainer, Mr. Jerry Stamp, who wrote and performed the Cool Story theme song and all other jingles and stings that appear on the show. As I always suggest, do yourselves a favor and look for Jerry's music wherever you stream. And finally, thank you for listening. Until next time, pura vida.
Everybody's had some adventures. Everybody's had a few close calls. Everybody's got a story. What's yours?